Which is harder, to determine the technology that's going to make us rich, or to identify those technologies that are going to make us vulnerable? That's the subject of today's Errant hashtag, which is entitled Accidents Can Happen. This podcast starts with a couple dozen of us having dinner in a restaurant on the edge of downtown and trying to parse what happened at the recent Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Now, only 3 of our number had actually been to the show. The rest of us had followed it on social media. We were the audience of those breathless tweets that talked about the great new products that proved to be not so new, and the talks by grand experts that revealed that the experts were still learning their script. As it happened, Frank Sinatra was playing on the sound system of the restaurant. "You may ignore my hopeful heart," Old Blue Eyes sang, "and I may not be the one to make you fall. But accidents can happen after all." Everyone at the dinner agreed. The biggest topic at the Consumer Electronics Show was the automotive information system. It was everywhere. There were dozens and dozens of products, though of course the biggest and most sophisticated was the self-driving car. Many at our dinner table wondered aloud whether or not Google, the world's largest search engine firm, was going to be able to make a successful product of the self-driving car, or at least a product that was more successful than the Google Glass product, which recently was terminated. One member at the table said the automobile has finally become an information platform, a mobile information platform, in much the same way that the cell phone became an information platform a decade ago. Well, at that point, I wanted to interrupt and say that actually the automobile has been an information platform for about 2 decades, maybe even 3 if you want to stretch it. But they were a group of entrepreneurs. The opportunity to make money was far more interesting to them than the truth about technology. Technological history simply was not their field. Instead of devoting most of their attention to the self-driving car, most of the people at the show were paying attention to a new application, a new interface, that allowed a smartphone to look at all the data a car was gathering and discover how the car was operating and how it was being driven. This interface had a lot of different applications, one of which was to allow parents to follow the driving of their children. This interface would tell them where the car was going, its exact route, the speed at which it was being driven, and also things like the number of passengers in the car who had buckled their seat belts. One member of our group quickly reached the obvious conclusion and asked, "But does not this make us vulnerable to hackers? What would happen if a hacker took over control of an automobile? What could they learn? What could they do?" She was obviously looking for the answer that said, "Not very much. It's quite hard, and they would never be able to take control of the car from you." The real answer to this question is far more worrisome. The cyber threats to the modern automobile were described in a report that was published last fall by the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. This report noted that there were several paths into the computing systems of a car that were not that difficult to exploit, that an advanced student, for example, might be able to understand them and make use of them. Perhaps the simplest of these paths is the onboard diagnostics port. It's a plug that's located underneath the steering wheel of every car that's been manufactured since 1996. This port is a standard item. The standard is a public document. The protocols of the underlying electronic control units are also not that hard to find. Using a path such as this, an outsider could do things like raise and lower windows, turn on the windshield wipers, flash the headlights, race the engine, cut off the brakes, deploy the airbags. Any of these things, obviously, could be a distraction to the driver and a safety hazard. The report concluded that the automobile is becoming more vulnerable, not less. It's being connected to more and more things. And people are arguing that there is value in networking the cars themselves and having them share information so that they can make better decisions about how to deal with the road ahead. For 20 years, our automotive information systems have been protected by a global ignorance and by a general indifference about what might be gained by hacking into a moving computer. As we have done so often in our history, we think about functionality first, and then we get to the issues of privacy and security only as an afterthought. We design for the good user, the one who wants to achieve the specified and detailed ends. Yet we live in a world with people who don't care about those ends, who will pay anything for information and spend a great deal of time thinking about what gain they might get from it, no matter what it might cost us. Sinatra's song ended that night. Before you know it, I will know. And then, of course, came the title. And accidents will happen after all. This is David Allen Greer for the Errant hashtag. Take care.